In today's world, many experience an inexplicable fatigue, as if carrying an unbearable burden. From an early age, they were taught to avoid conflicts, to be kind, understanding, and polite. The idea that good always triumphs, and that sincerity and modesty will inevitably be rewarded is firmly rooted in their minds. But what if all this is just a convenient lie designed to make a person predictable and manageable? How many times have they had to remain silent to maintain peace, sacrificing their own interests to avoid disappointing others? How often, when faced with disrespect and exploitation, have they had to put on a smile and say, "Everything is fine"? Tears, anger, and pride were suppressed in the name of a false virtue that only amplified the feeling of insignificance. It's important to realize that the world isn't quick to reward good guys. It favors those who act strategically. If you feel deceived in your expectations, striving to be a good person and an understanding friend, you begin to understand that the more effort you put in to earn recognition, the less respect you receive in return. Concessions only create new demands, and generosity leads to devaluation. It is at this moment that the figure of Machiavelli appears on the horizon, whose ideas can turn the usual perception of the world and relationships in it upside down. Niccolo Machiavelli is a figure whose reputation is often unfairly demonized. He was probably one of the first to dare to present the truth about the mechanisms of power without embellishment. He realized what many prefer to ignore. Moral principles, detached from the real world, can become a real trap. Giving the impression of being a virtuous person is not the same as being effective, fair, or worthy of respect. This analysis will attempt to frankly and impartially understand why striving to be an exclusively good person can be counterproductive. This is not a call to cruelty or insensitivity, but rather a call to awakening, to abandoning the naive belief that the world is fair and that virtue is always rewarded. It is necessary to face the truth, no matter how unpleasant it may be. As long as a person tries to please everyone, they become vulnerable and dependent on the opinions of others, turning into a hostage of their own kindness. If they are tired of being used, ignored, or discarded, perhaps it is time for a change. It is worth turning to Machiavelli's lessons, which were probably never taught, in order to finally gain control of their life. It is worth considering whether the world really values good people so highly. Just look around and ask yourself, who is most admired? Who holds leadership positions? Who enjoys respect, influence, and has the opportunity to determine the course of events? Are these those who show the greatest generosity, compassion, and justice? Or those who possess strategic thinking, assertiveness, and resistance to manipulation? The harsh reality of life is that the world is driven not by altruism, but by a pragmatic calculation of benefit. Niccolo Machiavelli, a perceptive thinker of the Renaissance, understood this truth long before our time. His famous treatise, The Prince, was not created to teach the reader atrocities, but to reveal the true rules of the political game. One of the most ruthless lessons taught by the Florentine sage is that virtue alone is not enough for success and prosperity. Moreover, in certain circumstances, excessive kindness can be the shortest path to oblivion and defeat. A person can dedicate their life to serving the ideals of loyalty, kindness, and compassion. They can generously share their talents and resources, provide assistance to those in need, without demanding anything in return. However, as soon as they cease to be useful and beneficial to others, they will inevitably be forgotten, replaced by a more efficient person, deprived of a voice. And all this will be done without the slightest remorse. The reason is simple. The world evaluates a person not by their moral qualities, but by the benefit they bring, by the influence they possess, and by the impact they have on the surrounding reality. An observant person has probably noticed that people who are exceptionally kind often find themselves in the role of petitioners, constantly seeking to earn someone's favor. They constantly make excuses, explain their actions, trying to prove their value. At the same time, those who know how to set boundaries say a firm no, and clearly state their interests enjoy universal respect. Their voice is heard, their opinion is taken into account. They occupy a worthy place in society. Why is this happening? Because blind kindness is perceived as a sign of weakness. Those who never resist and do not pose a threat are not taken seriously. They are treated as a resource to be exploited, not as a fully realized individual, as a tool rather than an equal partner. The relentless pursuit of pleasing others can be self-destructive, because in a world that values strength and influence, such obsequiousness is seen as a weakness to be exploited. The harsh but true reality is that genuine respect is built not on universal love, but on the awareness of one's own strength and the ability to defend one's interests. As Machiavelli argued, it is more important for a leader to inspire fear than to inspire love, because fear is a sign that they cannot be ignored. A person who lives only to please others risks becoming expendable, a pawn in someone else's game. This is not because of their bad qualities, but because the world does not value those who are willing to dissolve themselves to please others. It is necessary to understand the reasons for this painful desire for universal approval, because behind the mask of kindness may lie something deeper that has undermined their own interests for years. In the following sections, we will delve into the psychological roots of this phenomenon and explore why the desire to be good is often just a veiled form of fear. If these reflections resonate, the author encourages you to subscribe to the channel, expressing gratitude for your support. The desire to please everyone is not an innate quality, but is acquired in the process of upbringing, when a person learns that acceptance by others requires giving up part of themselves, their sincere desires and opinions. From childhood, they are taught to suppress their true feelings and desires in order to meet the expectations of others. Don't do that. It's not pretty. Be nice. Don't contradict your elders. How polite you are. Gradually, step by step, a person shapes themselves according to the requirements of others, abandoning their own individuality. However, there is an aspect that is often unspoken. The desire to constantly please others is a real emotional trap. It is a psychological prison built of poisonous praise and punishments, skillfully disguised as educational measures. A person learns the lesson that obsequiousness ensures love and recognition, while displays of anger, setting personal boundaries, or expressing selfish desires inevitably lead to rejection. In an effort to survive, the individual adapts to these conditions. But this adaptation eventually turns into unconditional submission. As a result, the individual loses the ability to say no without experiencing a painful sense of guilt. They feel an unwavering responsibility for the well-being of others, even if it destroys them from the inside. Discontent accumulates but is carefully hidden, and disappointments are forgiven too quickly. In the pursuit of maintaining the image expected by others, a person exhausts themselves, not because it reflects their true essence, but because they are convinced that it ensures their safety. However, it is important to face the truth. This behavior is dictated not by kindness, but by fear. Fear of being rejected, unloved, or labeled a bad person. Fear of appearing before the world as they really are, with their desires, anger, boundaries, and their own voice. This fear turns a person into their own enemy, forcing them to hide behind socially acceptable but emotionally destructive behavior. The tragedy of the situation is that they do not even realize that they are digging their own grave. Often, what is taken for empathy turns out to be a fear of open confrontation. What is elevated to the rank of deep understanding may be dictated by fear of loneliness and rejection. And behind the outward goodwill often lies insecurity in one's own value and fear of not being good enough. In reality, such kindness is nothing more than a skillfully created mask, a subconscious trick designed to protect against the painful feeling of rejection. However, this mask designed to protect comes at a price, suppressing the true essence, depriving one of strength and self-esteem. If you do not get rid of this mask in time, it risks growing into the skin forever, transforming into an integral part of the personality. One day, looking in the mirror, a person may realize with horror that they no longer recognize their true self. But there is a way out. To find the way to one's true self, it is worth turning to the experience of a person who, like no other, understood the power of image, perception, and strategy. Niccolo Machiavelli. In his writings, you can find answers to questions about how to stop being a hostage to the obsessive desire to seem good and earn respect for your true essence. Attempts to earn the recognition of others by demonstrating high moral qualities, ethics, and incorruptible honesty are doomed to failure. It's time to stop. More than half a millennium ago, the insightful Machiavelli warned, "The path is strewn with roses, but it holds many dangers." In harsh reality, it is not the benefactors who triumph, but those who know how to get their way. Indeed, to achieve success in the game of life, a clear strategy and a deep understanding of human nature are necessary. One must realize that people's actions are dictated not by altruism, but by selfish motives, fear, and the pursuit of power. In his immortal treatise, The Prince, Machiavelli aptly notes, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are." This phrase strikes like a thunderclap, shattering the illusion that sincerity, honesty, and authenticity are sufficient grounds for universal respect. The harsh reality is that people evaluate not your good intentions, but your external manifestation, the image you create, and the impact you make. Even if you are justice personified, but appear weak, you will be treated accordingly. Even if your heart is full of generosity, but you do not command due respect, you will simply be ignored. That is why the prince, and in this context, the prince is everyone who strives to manage their own life, should not succumb to naivety. It is necessary to be able to appear virtuous when it is beneficial, and to act strategically when the situation demands it. Niccolo Machiavelli, a perceptive thinker of the Renaissance, argued that a ruler should skillfully combine the qualities of a beast. He drew an analogy with the fox, symbolizing the ability to recognize cunning plots and avoid traps, and the lion embodying power and inspiring awe even in the most dangerous opponents, like wolves. This metaphor may sound harsh, but it reflects the brutal reality of political struggle. Machiavelli warned against the one-sided development of these qualities. He insisted on the need to be both cunning like a fox, to unravel others' intrigues, and strong like a lion, to make ill-wishers think twice before engaging in open confrontation. The pursuit of respect, according to Machiavelli, requires a ruler not to blindly follow moral dogmas, but to display virtù, a fusion of courage, intellect, audacity, and self-control. It is about the ability to act calculatingly and coolly when circumstances require it. It is about understanding that in certain situations, the manifestation of toughness is the only way to maintain order, but not out of malice or sadistic inclinations, but out of wisdom and strategic foresight. As Machiavelli himself astutely observed, a person who seeks to act virtuously in all situations will inevitably fail in a world where not everyone adheres to high moral principles. Everyone is familiar with the situation when the desire to do the right thing turns into a series of disappointments. A person striving for good often faces abuse, disregard, and injustice. Those around do not always adhere to fair rules, and continuing to play by these rules leads to constant defeats. However, this is not a call to abandon one's own values, but rather to rethink their application. It is important to stop using them as restrictive shackles and start acting from a position of strength. It is necessary to analyze how kindness is perceived and used by other people. Niccolo Machiavelli, the author of the famous treatise The Prince, was not a cynic. He was a realist who looked at humanity without illusions or embellishments. His work is a guide to survival in a world where appearance has immense power and weakness hidden beneath a mask of virtue can be a death sentence. The question of balance naturally arises: how to stop being naive without turning into a cold and malicious person? Is there an alternative between kindness and cruelty? It is important to realize the fallacy of the notion that to preserve virtue, one must be submissive. Being a good person does not mean silently accepting all offenses, forgiving indiscriminately, and suppressing one's feelings to maintain peace. Such a position leads to self-destruction and loss of self. Often, what is taken for kindness is actually a manifestation of naivety and cowardice, skillfully disguised under the mask of virtue. The inability to recognize this fine line threatens to turn one into an emotional doormat on which everyone wipes their feet. True kindness, in contrast to blind self-sacrifice, stems from awareness, clarity of thought, and the ability to make choices. Being kind does not mean being a carefree simpleton, always ready to serve, invariably smiling, and sacrificing oneself for those who would not lift a finger in return. Such behavior is nothing more than self-denial, an emotional dependency cleverly disguised as moral principles. A naive person sincerely believes that others will treat them with the same warmth they offer to others. They are convinced of the world's inherent fairness and assume that honesty will inevitably be rewarded. Naivety fuels illusions of gratitude, reciprocity, and attention, but ultimately leads to bitter disappointment. The root cause lies in projecting one's own noble qualities onto others who may not possess them. True kindness, however, possesses a different nature. It is characterized by firmness, the ability to say no, and the wisdom to walk away when necessary. It recognizes that not everyone deserves the best of you, and that lavishing your qualities on those who cannot reciprocate is not generosity but a waste of resources. A person can embody justice, compassion, and unwavering honesty while still commanding respect and even inspiring a healthy dose of fear. This is someone whose presence is powerful, who clearly understands the boundaries of what is acceptable and unacceptable. Niccolo Machiavelli, whose views may seem harsh by today's standards, did not hate virtue. He despised naivety because he understood that in a world ruled by predators, kindness without strength is like defenseless prey in the heart of the jungle. Therefore, everyone must ask themselves a crucial question. Is kindness a shield that protects from adversity? Or does it expose and make one vulnerable? Does it strengthen the spirit or erode it? If the concept of virtue boils down to meekly accepting injustice, being content with little, and feeling guilty for natural anger, it is not kindness, but submission. But there is a way out. There is a point of equilibrium where one does not have to abandon their true essence, nor does one need to bow down to anyone. It is a space where one can act boldly, with clarity of mind and well-developed emotional intelligence. We will explore the path to this harmony. We will discuss how to stop being overly accommodating without turning into an unscrupulous villain, and how to finally take control of one's life without betraying one's ideals. For those who seek to reclaim their lost self-respect, the journey toward transformation begins here. Many, upon realizing their submissive position, make a dangerous mistake, believing that to escape excessive compliance, they must become cold, insensitive, and even cruel. The rebound effect, a well-known phenomenon in psychology, occurs when a person who has been under pressure or the influence of others for a long time decides to drastically change their behavior, becoming the complete opposite of their former self: harsh, emotionless, and calculating. However, such a transformation is just another trap on the path to true self-realization. By abandoning their true essence, an individual does not gain strength, but only creates an illusion of protection based on the denial of their own feelings and needs. True freedom lies not in running away from oneself, but in achieving wholeness. This means ceasing to play roles imposed by society and starting to act in accordance with one's genuine desires and values. It's not about being good or bad, but about being authentic. Looking in the mirror, one must realize that they are capable of being kind, but will not allow themselves to be passive, compassionate, but not permissive, willing to help, but not groveling for attention. How can one stop being too nice without betraying their true nature? First and foremost, it is essential to recognize that everyone's voice matters. From childhood, many are taught that complaining, setting boundaries, and expressing disagreement are signs of selfishness. But this is a lie designed to keep people in obedience. True selfishness lies in expecting others to silently submit while their voices are dominated by others. Expressing one's opinion, taking a firm stance, and declaring disagreement are not selfishness, but a manifestation of dignity and self-respect. Secondly, one must master the art of saying no. The ability to refuse is an act that grants extraordinary freedom. At the same time, Refusal does not necessarily have to be expressed aggressively or sound like a scream. A calm, confident, and unequivocal no has much more power than countless excuses. It carries a key message. You have personal boundaries, and people who know how to defend them are respected. Those who do not have clear boundaries are often exploited. Thirdly, it is worth paying attention to the reaction of others to the changes taking place within you. These people can serve as a kind of thermometer, showing how well you are moving in the right direction. If, having begun to assert yourself and express your individuality, you suddenly hear accusations that you have become different, strange, or selfish, this may only mean that your previous submission was beneficial to someone. Your changes disrupt the unspoken agreement that allowed these people to use you for their own benefit, which naturally causes discomfort. However, don't be fooled. This reaction is a sure sign of your progress. Fourth, you must stop the fruitless attempts to achieve universal understanding. Not everyone will be able to accept and understand your transformation, and that's okay. You are not obliged to conform to the image that others have of you. Your main task is to remain true to your truth, your inner world, and your emotional well-being. Fifth, you must abandon the pursuit of universal approval, replacing it with an unwavering commitment to your own authenticity. By acting sincerely and in accordance with your beliefs, you may not win everyone's sympathy, but you will earn the respect of those whose opinion truly matters. Moreover, self-respect comes, a sense of self-worth that cannot be taken away. Niccolo Machiavelli, a famous political thinker, did not seek to teach the reader cruelty, but to warn against naivety. The main mistake, in his opinion, is the belief that kindness alone is enough to win respect in this world. To achieve recognition, it takes the courage to abandon the role of people-pleaser, the strength to be yourself, without needing anyone's permission. However, on this path of self-improvement, a crucial moment of choice arrives, whether to continue self-destruction or take control of your life into your own hands. It is important to realize that the obsession with appearing good can be costly. It's time to decide what is more important, universal love or inner freedom. It's time to be utterly honest with yourself and ask, how much longer does one intend to pretend to be a good guy? How much more energy, voice, and dignity will be sacrificed to maintain an image imposed by others? It is important to understand that such behavior is neither virtue nor nobility, but a psychological prison where a person is praised for being harmless, predictable, and not a threat to others. The author boldly declares the harsh truth that many prefer to ignore. No one is going to relieve you of life's difficulties. Do not expect someone to come and give you due credit for all the sacrifices, appreciate your merits, and finally let you rest. This will not happen because as long as you are willing to be a useful tool, there will always be someone who wants to take advantage of your willingness. There is no malice in this. It is simply a harsh reality that does not lend itself to good intentions. You can continue to adhere to the socially imposed image of the ideal person. Remain calm, patient, understanding, always ready to help and accommodating. However, in this case, you will face a future full of disappointments, resentments, and a sense of your own insignificance. But there is another way, awakening. You can decide right now that your kindness will no longer be a burden that shackles your freedom. Start acting consciously, with firm determination and presence of mind. Choose for yourself when and to whom to show generosity. Stop giving what you don't get in return, and most importantly, stop living in search of approval from others, like a dog begging for affection. The truth, as you know, is simple and straightforward. In this world, universal recognition and honor are given only to those who value and respect themselves. True freedom is attained only when a person ceases to seek approval of their existence from others. In this regard, a natural question arises. When was the last time you found the strength to say a firm no without feeling a crushing sense of guilt? When was the last time you put your own interests first without looking back at the opinions of others? When did you allow yourself small joys and pleasures without thinking about how others would perceive it? Share these moments of revelation in the comments. The author is genuinely interested in learning about those turning points when you realize that excessive compliance and the desire to please everyone are destroying your personality. This conversation needs to continue because a huge number of people live in captivity to other people's expectations and prejudices. Your experience and example can be the spark that awakens them and helps them break free. And if this call to rethink your lifestyle, actions, and self-perception has resonated in your soul, the author strongly recommends not stopping there and moving on. Believe me, it really matters. The path to yourself is just beginning.